mental health is physical wealth.
Hello, hello, hello. Today is January 29th, 2024, and I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to come on before now. I wasn't feeling well. Something got to me. I was like, ooh, fighting. I don't know. You're going to have to pardon my voice because it's still like lingering. So it's the last bits of whatever it was I was struggling to fight off. But for those who knew that I was ill, I really appreciate your thoughts and prayers. Um, Especially since sometimes I go on Facebook trying to keep up with some of the other people's podcasts and live streams and participate in those. Yeah, sorry if I missed your show. Some of the times I was delirious. I wasn't feeling well. I had a fever. Have you ever had like a fever and it was like you were delirious? I don't know what's going on these days. Back in the day when I was younger and growing up, we had colds and it was come and go. But nowadays you have a cold and it's like, ooh, is it COVID, Jesus? Is it RSV? Is it something, and you always have to be on your toes, stay on your vitamins. I do stay on my vitamins and I drink plenty of water. So, and I eat well. So that's probably one of the reasons, well, contributing factors to feeling okay faster. I felt ill like Friday. I was starting to no, it was like Sunday. It didn't hit until like Sunday. Where I wasn't feeling well, and then Monday was like out of the question. I was out of it. I was completely. I didn't know what day it was by that time. But I wanted to give people enough time to come in. I know I've been away. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, I got other things I got to do. It's a Monday. It's a Monday." But let's try to make it a fun day Monday. And I wanted to talk about a few things on top of, staying bundled up. Definitely going to have to stay bundled up. Keep your head covered. I don't know. I just do better when I wrap my head up. I don't know about you, but I do better when I wrap my head up and I keep my head covered and my ears covered. And I don't know, I can get through the cold and flu season really well. But when I don't do it and I forgot, I left out and I did not have my hat. Um, we're out of practice. We're out of practice. I know, right? But anyway, I see some people have come on and joined us, so I'll go right ahead into the topic. Again, excuse me for being ill. I'm still a little bit under the weather, but I figured I need to get on here and get it going because I am at least not delirious. So I know the stream can't tell, having blacked out now. But technical difficulties waits for no one. But anyway, okay, so today I wanted to talk about something that's been really um, bothering me. So I took some time off social media 2018 because I said, hey, let me go ahead and figure out what I'm going to do as far as a career. It's difficult to when you're a military spouse, it's difficult to complete one single career path. As a military spouse, I've had so many jobs that it is like ridiculous. Um, for example, I used to work for the Glen Burnie Postal Office as a postal carrier, and let me tell you, I was in that 2-ton hot truck going around the city picking up mail in those blue mailboxes all over the city and in different business, business. They pick up, the post office person comes in there, pick up the mail or whatever, and then it was hot as Hades in that 2-ton truck. So I'm not even 100 pounds, and I'm driving this truck, this 2-ton truck, in the heat in Maryland, and I am burning up from every which way you can imagine. But I'm an athlete. Just recently, was a track star, so I wasn't afraid of sweating. So, and I wasn't afraid of hard work. And being military spouse, I was like, it's whatever. I can do whatever job. Just I'm going with the flow. So then I had a job again working with mortgage companies, and that was one of the things that I really loved doing because it was a lot of my past from being in Chicago and living back at home, where I worked for different white collar offices as a student and trying to find my way through my academic path so that I could go to a career path. So it was like, you got to focus on one thing. The world says you got to focus on one thing. You got to focus on one thing. And it's like it's hard to be able to focus on one thing when you're a student. So then, before I ever got married, it was difficult to find one career path that would allow me to be able to go to school and work at the same time. A lot of places don't want you to work and go to school. So that was a problem. And then when I joined my husband, when he went to the military, I joined him in Maryland. And it was difficult to keep a single job at that point because military spouses are not necessarily able to be stationary so that they can have a career. So you have a bunch of different type of jobs throughout your entire life. And when it comes to the time where you're like, oh well, how am I going to retire from something? How am I going to retire from anything if I can never keep a singular career path? And it's like that just wasn't going to happen. So what I decided in 2018 was to complete my studies because it was really the only thing that I could really complete. I could complete and still, tie everything together. So I decided to go for my PhD in industrial organizational psychology. Like I said, I really don't do the camera thing, but I'm trying. I'm working it. Plus, I'm not feeling well, so it's difficult to speak. It's difficult to speak on a regular, talking on this camera and get tongue tied. But anyway, so I decided to go to school because I thought that's a safe space. I could go to school, I could finish something, I could complete something. I could complete my academic career path. And in doing so, I was nervous. It's not that I was, they say some people they struggle with imposter syndrome. They have doubts and things like that. It wasn't that I was nervous because I'm older. Um, I ain't got time for, a whole lot of stuff that a lot of students endure that what they endure when they're younger. Hey, Eric, I know you can understand because you went back to school as an older student as well. It's hard when you go back to school as an adult that's experienced so many career paths or even a singular career path, and now you're returning back to school. It's like I'm not a kid anymore. I don't I don't have a lot of questions anymore. A lot of the things that I've experienced has answered a lot of those questions. So I'm a different type of student. And I don't know if the instructors are going to appreciate that or be upset about it. So you never really want to make an instructor upset because the pen is mightier than the sword in this respect. They can feel some type of way and mark your grade lower than what it should be, which kind of hurts your pride, but more importantly, it hurts your GPA. So I was concerned, and I met someone who happened to be the specialist for the program. She was over the program. She was the head of the department, and I expressed um, my concerns. I said, for this program, I'm expected to advance the field and inform relative theories in a way that's never been done before. But that's impossible because look at this late hour. I mean, centuries, of writing. People have said everything that there is to be said. There's nothing new under the sun from what the Bible said. Um, and I agree with that because it's like all the people that's been born before me, all the philosophers that have written and discovered and had ideas before me, there's nothing I can do that will be different. So I was concerned. And she told me, well, you don't have to be that original. Just make sure you have a little bit of originality and build on something that someone else did. And I said, okay, I can understand that now. I think I could do that. So I went ahead and enrolled into the program. I thought, oh, well, that's divine intervention, right? Um, confirmation, affirmation, and more confirmation to the affirmation that, yeah, go to school. It'll be okay. You'll get through it. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I had already been servicing the school community, the various types of schooling, homeschoolers, military homeschoolers, brick and mortar homeschooling is where I originally started back in Chicago, especially with at-risk students. And then from there, also online students, especially with the K-12. So I did a lot of tutoring. You got to make, money some kind of way. So you got to, be diverse in your skill set so that you can always generate wealth. So that's what I worked on. And during my chase after this degree, I discovered some things. I discovered um, people, they follow orders even at their own detriment. That's that's concerning because that really messes up people's mental health. And a lot of times in the hierarchy of the chain of command, they're not aware of the damage that they're doing to people mentally because this is a practice that's systemic and it's been rolling over for so many years that people haven't really examined the way that it impacted people's mental health. Now, that was 2018 as I'm continuing on. And I found another thing. I found that it wasn't just military where people would follow orders at their own detriment. Civilians, I found studies that showed civilians were also following, um, they had a followership in the workplace where the workers had exhibited um, psychological damage from following managers' orders or advice or suggestions and trying to make sure that their work evaluations were exhibiting that they could be promoted in their job. A lot of people, they only followed the orders because they wanted their work evaluation to reflect the opportunity for them to get a promotion because they needed the finances. People work because they need the finances. So clearly they're going to be motivated to do whatever it takes to get the promotion, or they're going to go into another job and try to get a job where it's paying more money. Now, studies all show and supported these facts, but there was something that still was missing. There was the motivation theory, there was the attribution theories, the reason, incentives, and all of these reasons why people would, you know, make these decisions at their own detriment. But there was still something that didn't seem right. It would seem like something was missing. That something that was missing, um, I discovered that as well. And I wrote about it, and it's globally trending. And that's a blessing because I didn't think that I could find anything that was like could contribute to anything like in such a significant way. For example, global studies found that information asymmetry in the workplace means that one teammate has more information than the other teammate. And that's always going to be the case. And it's like, why is that always the case? If everybody's reading the same books, if you're going to the same schools and everybody's reading the same books, why is it that people have information asymmetry? Why is it that you have more information than your counterpart? Well, there's the encoding process, the manner in which you understand information and then you repeat information or use it in your unique way and then repeat it to others or convey it to others. So that's a matter of a factor that contributes to information asymmetry practices in the workplace not being in alignment with everybody being on the same page. Then I discovered there were some global studies called knowledge hiding in the workplace. Now, this was really psychologically damaging people to the point where a lot of people were concerned that people were going postal. People were physically harming other people. And it's like, hey, Pastor Sarton, thank you for joining us. Pardon me for not sounding right. I'm under the weather a bit. So keep praying for me. Keep praying for me. I appreciate your prayers thus far. But the reason why this study was important is because they researchers cannot go in and study these things in other aspects because some places are more protected than others. So they have to use the workplace in order to get a clear view of what's happening. Now, the knowledge hiding in the workplace is something that a lot of African Americans are aware of because that is just something that's commonplace in the African American community where other cultures hide information from us. But in this respect, the managers were hiding information from their subordinates to maintain a competitive edge, to keep the subordinates underfoot because they didn't want the subordinate to take their job. It's for many reasons. But the problem was it was causing psychological harm to the person the knowledge was being hidden from. But a lot of people did not know. A lot of studies were not showing this, except for most recently within the last 10 years. So in 2018, when I was watching all these things and researching all these things, a lot of this information, which a lot of people had already experienced, it was not being seen in studies where change takes place. So the change did not occur because studies didn't see it. They didn't acknowledge it. So the global studies from like 20, I want to say 2012 to 2019. I don't have my notes in front of me. I'm just going by memory. So it was in review. The global studies for information asymmetry practices and knowledge hiding in the workplace were under review. And when a study goes in review, oftentimes it's because, or I should say, 99% of the time, it's because there's no new information to be found and they're moving on to another topic. Now, I found new information and I wanted to present this in order to establish, to make my contribution for my PhD studies, my PhD degree. So I also found one other thing. I found there's a research bias with schools where the schools were only researching the Pygmalion theory and the golem theory. The Pygmalion theory is thought to be, some people took it out of context. It was a laboratory experiment way out of content when it was applied to teachers and the way they deal with students. They would encourage students that they liked to excel academically, and students that they did not like, whether it was because they were in a lower economic threshold than someone else, or they just didn't think that that student had any potential to excel, they would not feed into them to motivate them the way that they would other students who they felt were more promising. Excuse me. So the golem theory is the opposite. You speak down about someone and they're supposed to excel because you don't believe in them, and they're going to show you, you should have believed in me. You should have believed in me. Now I'm going to excel and you're going to wish you believed in me. But studies show, centuries of studies show that this was not accurate. There was no way a statistic could be changed, and you take out the outliers, you take out all of these variables that to try to make the statistics come back to resemble what you want it to look like, what you know it should look like, but it just didn't. It was not in alignment with what was thought to be scientifically significant to claim that this method was sound, was reasonable, was logical to produce the outcomes that they desired. So people would initiate, not just people, but teachers would initiate this Pygmalion theory, but it was not always producing the outcome. The students weren't always able to excel in the way that they needed them to, so the schools could stay open, because the students were not testing well. They were not performing well, regardless of the matter that they thought, oh, well, I'm promoting this kid. I'm backing this kid. I fed this kid so much positivity that this kid is going to excel, and that kid just didn't excel. It just didn't happen that way. And no one could figure out the type of methodology or the science that they could manipulate in order to get that kind of answer. So in my studies, I found that I combined the school studies and I combined it with the information asymmetry practices and the workplace knowledge hiding practices. And combining all three of those, we can see something that we had never seen before. Now, I did not divulge my perspective of these things because the study should be conducted in the manner in which I conveyed it should take place by people who are aware of what to do with information. Because some studies are showing that the research methods that we've been using for centuries now just are not sufficient enough tools to present the proper information. And in my perspective, the inability to produce the proper information is furthering psychological damage to everyone. And we're not getting ahead of it the way we need to. Mainly because oftentimes there's not enough emphasis placed on the intricacies that are contributing to psychological damage. Now, why is that important? That's important because we're seeing a great deal of times where students don't feel safe in school. And by right, they shouldn't, because there is no logical evidence pointing to them being safe in the schools. Teachers are not feeling safe in the schools. And by right, again, they should not feel safe because we are not doing enough to make them feel safe. And it's not just physically. Before you ever get to the physical aspects of safety, you have the psychological aspects of safety. And the significance of that is if you cannot psychologically find yourself safe, you cannot think, you cannot be creative, you cannot perform as expected. And a lot of times, if you can't perform as expected, you lose your job, you lose your credibility, you lose your ability to make a livable wage so that you could continue to try to improve yourself. No one's giving free mental health care, psychological evaluations, and helping people, in that way. And since starting the Adroit Living session of the Erudition Network program, I've seen an increase in people concerning themselves with mental health. And mental health awareness has risen by leaps and bounds, and that's really great. I'm extremely excited about that. But more importantly, I'm concerned that it's not taking the proper turns that it needs to in order for everyone to understand who should be investing in it, how lucrative this effort is. What'd you say, Eddie? People need help, and it's good you are here to try to help. Thank you. And I have seen that, before I posted Adroit Living as something other than two different words in the dictionary, a lot of people have since adroit businesses have popped up all over the place. Adroit pages have just everybody's adroit, and that's great. But most importantly, people are focusing more on mental health and what it's doing to people, the psychological damage that's happening. I spoke a lot about PTSD. A lot of times when people endure psychological damage for extended periods of time, it causes a post traumatic syndrome disorder, and it develops these triggers that the person is not necessarily aware of at first. This is a problem because more and more we are seeing that people who are supposed to be in safe places are actually enduring a great deal of stress. They're under so much stress that it is causing psychological damage that's irreparable. And what do you do about stresses that are irreparable? We're heading into a situation where we cannot financially cover these problems because we're neglecting to resolve these stressors. We're putting people under too much stress. A lot of times we can see in the business aspect, people saw that downsizing jobs were a big thing. It was a commonplace where a lot of the jobs would be combined, and instead of multiple workers, you would have just one worker working them multiple duties and performing multiple tasks. That's stressful. That's too much stress to put on one person, even though you're paying them more than what you would pay one person, but the person is still doing more than one job, and you're not paying them accordingly because you're using that money to profit, to make a profit. But the psychological damage that is causing, the irreparable psychological damage that you can't afford to pay for, we can't cover those costs. No one's saying anything about it because a lot of times we're not collectively hearing the voice. We're not collectively hearing the voices of people who are having the lived experience. Now, some people thought my dissertation was going to go into whatever direction they wanted it to go in, the direction they wanted to see it go in. The matter of the fact is, the direction it needs to take is our global economy is failing. It's failing because the long periods of time that people are under a great deal of overwhelming stress. And it's causing such psychological damage that people are not performing well at their jobs. You know, you've seen some memes, and some of the memes said, "Oh, you had one job. All you had was one job, and you failed to do that. You failed miserably." You know, people are often, you see these memes, make it make sense. Um, you see a lot of memes that's really telling of the psychological uh, spaces that we're in. And we're also seeing the financial repercussions. We're seeing food prices go up. We're seeing sales go down. We're seeing business performers not performing to expectations. And the projected year to year uh, um, earnings or increases that they would have. I'm trying to make sure I keep this as simple as possible. It's not working out. It's not in alignment with what we thought it would be and what we thought it should be. And a lot of people do not know why. Stakeholders, shareholders, investors, excuse me, potential employees, entrepreneurs are even seeing that we are not in alignment with what we know we should be. And a lot of people don't understand why. Ask yourself this: would you feel comfortable working at your job when you don't feel safe at your job, when you don't feel safe leaving your children at school, when you don't feel safe opening packages because you don't know what somebody else, is dealing with psychologically, and if this package is going to be safe to open or not. It's too many variables that's mentally distracting people from feeling safe. This is impacting us financially. We see in churches, oh, they turning it up. They got DJs, club DJs in the churches turning it up. And I don't mean turning it up for Jesus or turning it up for God. I mean, they said, God, if you want to turn this water into wine, we already there. We already there. It's not even like that anymore. It's like the mental spaces. Nothing's sacred. Nothing's and when I say nothing is sacred, what I mean by that is, in a general sense, people used to feel that there was a manner in which you could present yourself in different places like churches, work, etc., in schools. Now it's not like that. And that's because the psychological damage. Yes, it is sad, Pastor Sarton, but a lot of people don't have any idea how we got there. And that's important because the finances that we think we're saving, we think we're profiting when we have these business decisions and we're still making sales and we're still seeing, some kind of profits margin increasing, but we're not understanding. We're not understanding the psychological damage that's happening if people do not respect the schools and they're doing whatever they want in these schools to the children, to people's safety, and in the churches. They're going in the churches and they're doing whatever they want in the churches because that's not sacred space either. And of course, you're not going to be able to go to the grocery store and feel safe. You're not going to be able to go to the mall and feel safe. The psychological warfare that's taking place at the grocery store, just trying to pay for food alone and toiletries. Now you got to figure out whether I'm going to pay for the food or I'm going to pay for toiletries. And then, heaven forbid, you need medicine. It's cold and flu season. Even if you don't have a chronic ailment, this the cold and flu season. The cold and flu medicines, over the counter, drugs that you could just buy at the grocery store, are like $30 a bottle, and you're making extremely stressful decisions all of the time. This is negatively impacting your psyche. Psychological damage is happening to the point where people are just like, forget it. It doesn't matter. What difference does it make? And it's like, where did all of this come from? It's coming from a place where we can no longer feel safe in places that used to be held sacred. Places where we used to feel safe. We used to feel safe in school because if nowhere else, school was a place where you could go and there's a teacher or somebody that's knowledgeable that's not going to hide knowledge from you, but help you. I know I should be resting, Tony. I'm going to get there after today. I had to get this off my chest because I can't rest. This is really eating me up because we keep trying to find ways to make sure that people understand the psychological damage that's happening to people and the financial repercussions that it's causing. A lot of times, research doesn't show the statistics for the financial repercussions because that's not the focus. That's not the scope of the studies. A lot of times, they're not projecting it because they have a different focus. For example, I had a dissertation chair. She said, go find a study that tells you to do exactly what you're trying to do. You can't always find a study that's telling you to do exactly what you're reading in all of these studies and picking up notes and hints of what's going on in these studies. However, there are books that have been written. There are studies that contribute to these very ideas that I'm telling you. And a lot of times people don't want but particular ones to say these things, to discover these things. For example, um, the person who had the global studies, who's attributed to knowledge hiding in the workplace, um, that young lady, she's younger than the topic itself. She's not that young, but she's younger than the topic itself. The person who wrote the studies about information asymmetry practices, he was attributed to it, but he is younger than the idea of information asymmetry and the psychological harm that it's caused people. But these are the people who some wanted to receive the credit for these studies. However, there's something bigger than that. And instead of us focusing on that, we're dwelling on other aspects that contribute to these factors as opposed to looking at the factor itself. So we have all of these variables that's contributing to the pile, but the pile itself is not being addressed. When people lose hope, they panic out of depression, of desperation. Yeah, desperation, and look for ways to survive. Yeah, and the reason why I said depression is because that's the first thing that comes to my mind. A lot of times people don't know the linkage between panicking and feeling um, de- depressed. You're scared. There's a lot of emotions that's happening, and previous studies did link that these things are relative to each other. It's not that it has to be in a particular order of events, but it is relative to one another. And you're right, desperation could be like the sum of it all. Um, so it's like the bigger picture is they're desperate and they're panicking, they're depressed, they're scared, they're worried, um, they're becoming volatile as a result of not knowing what to do out of desperation. So we're not looking at it in the manner in which we should be focusing on fixing people's mental health. It doesn't matter who it is that's investing the most money in it. The matter is, this is the way forward. This is the way to fix the world economy. This is the way to make sure that sales increase. You can't you can't purchase because people don't have jobs. They don't have money. You have snatch and grab more often, and the insurance companies are going out of business because people are claiming, these people that's going in and snatching and grabbing, they got to collect insurance on that. And they're fudging the details because a lot of the snatch and grabs are not snatch and grabbing as much as being reported. Okay? So you have psychological damage of the people who would normally report the accurate numbers. But now, because there is such a bind and they're under so much constant stress, they're lying. They're fudging the numbers. You're turning positive, honest citizens into liars because they're desperate. Pastor Sarton said. Dr. Sarton said, yeah, they're desperate. That desperation is derived from the lack of focusing on fixing the mental health in the environment. in our economy, in our American economy. You have Americans fighting against Americans. That's civil war. People don't feel safe talking to their neighbors. That's a problem. That's psychological damage that you're causing. Hey, Mama Michelle, thank you. I'm trying to feel better. I'm going to fight through it. I'm going to fight through it. Um, that psychological damage is irreparable because just like with downsizing jobs, when downsizing began to be the norm, workers didn't feel safe at work because they figured at any given time, just because the company wants to make more money, they could lose their job. It speaks nothing about their ability, their credibility, their ability to perform their jobs. It's just a matter of the fact that the company wants to profit more money, so they'll just downsize your job. That psychological stress and damage spilled over and kept spilling over to now no one feels safe with anything because it's too often. It's happening too often without any sort of logic, without any reason, without any avenue to stop this. I wonder if these companies are sabotaging themselves to balance their budget. I'm just going to say crickets. Uh, but I wouldn't be surprised because, like I said, a lot of people and studies are going to exhibit this. Studies are going to show it. They're going to try to blame everything they can, like the pandemic, people not feeling like they're going to live. They're going to blame some of everything. But the matter of the fact is, it is psychological damage that has been pressing so much in every aspect where Americans can't trust Americans, and students can't trust teachers, subordinates can't trust managers. Yes, that was a great question, Mama Michelle. You are so right. Because if we start asking these questions more and be more liberal with it, they'll see that we understand things differently. They'll see we know, and they'll have to address it. They'll be forced to address it. But will we say nothing? Will we don't ask questions like that? Will we don't force people to perform more expected studies that will answer these kind of questions and address these kinds of problems? We can't see the outcome that we really want to see. And what we want to see is people behaving in a more sound mind. There is no possible way that you could go to a church that has a sound mind, the people who have a sound mind, and behave in the manner in which you see going viral. There is no way you could go into a school and behave in the way that you see going viral when people have a sound mind. There is no way the profits and the economy would be failing in the way that it is, an American dollar growing weaker, if more Americans had a sound mind. Then the banks will widen their view. You would imagine. You would imagine. But it's not just the banks. It's more that the banks are benefiting just a little bit. And because they're not benefiting as much as they would like, it's really up to the organizations that we see every day, that we're patronizing every day. Hey, Regina, I appreciate you coming. We're at the fork in the road where God is saying there is life or death. Choose life. Choosing life is choosing Christ, as Jesus said, I come to give you life more abundantly. We have to not only choose better, but do better. Higher education is no longer the engine of a better life. Knowledge and understanding of one's purpose in life builds confidence and mental health. Well, it could definitely contribute to it. That's for sure. What did you say, Pastor Sarge? When the top is heavy, it's too heavy, those on the bottom suffer the repercussions. Yeah, it's like I know what you're saying, and we would love to point the fingers, but really, if we weren't contributing, if everybody wasn't contributing to it, for example, back in the day, and I'm sure you remember, back in the day, people they didn't patronize certain companies, especially when they found they didn't have the desired moral values. Hey, Janine, thank you, my sister, thank you, my sister. So now we don't care. We'll patronize the company anyway. I have never in my life seen all the viral videos that I've seen, and they're so dark. Before, we never used to post, we never used to share that like that. We'd talk about it, but we wouldn't share it to the point where it goes viral. Now, that's just the norm. We're sharing these dark things. We're feeding into it. We're contributing factors to the problems. And a lot of people say, well, that's what they like. That's what they want to see. Why do they say that? Because in business, people say, well, we're going to mark this item sky high, and we're going to call that the true market value. People, the only time that it's actually that value is if somebody purchases it at that value. If nobody purchases it at that value, it is not that value. So the price goes down, and then it goes down even further until somebody says, hey, you're so unreasonable as an organization, we're going to stop patronizing you altogether because you're always doing that. And then that company fails. That was the way business occurred back in the day. Somebody do something crazy or dark, or no one's going to say, oh, here, watch this. Now look at this person. No one's doing that. But now we're doing that all the time. We're contributing to the psychological damage. And we didn't even know how we were tricked into doing that. You know how we were tricked into doing that? Popularity. We were tricked into thinking that it was popular not to feel anything is sacred, not to allow anybody to feel safe in anywhere. Oh, it's okay that that kid is getting bullied in school. Nobody likes that kid. That kid got a mouth on him. That kid needs somebody to show him a lesson. Remember that? Yeah, that meant that people weren't feeling safe there. And then you go to church and somebody cursed in church. And it's like, oh my God, you swore in church? Oh, God forgive me, God forgive me. No, no. We need to do a whole different, back in the day, now Pastor Sarah, tell me if I'm wrong, back in the day, you got some mothers praying and some fathers praying, and you got the whole community praying. They put you on the altar, baby. You're not getting out of that church talking about, oh well, I'm sorry, forgive me. I forgot where I was at. Everybody's about to pray. They about to pray you through it. If we would band together as people and stop supporting those who are hurting us as people, they will make things affordable. Yeah, like living, like life, like the the ability to afford to think clearly. A lot of times people are not thinking clearly. It's too often. A lot of times people have to say I'm sorry because they weren't thinking right. It's a lot of times people have to say, oh, I didn't know that's what we were doing, because what was okay before is now wrong, and what was taboo back then is now trending. Yeah, they say language is language. Ridiculous. Hey, a lot of people excuse a lot of things, and it's really messing with people's psyche. And we have to watch for that, because People are in their right mind. They're not in their sound mind. And that's a serious problem. You better believe it. You would pray until you got a real breakthrough. People aren't doing that anymore, Pastor Sarton. In the church, somebody should have took that pastor. That should have went viral. That pastor that was in the church had a whole uh, club DJ in there, DJing it up. It should have been a whole convocational dedicated to putting that preacher on the altar. I'm just saying, it used to be a time where you couldn't be called a bishop if you were not a bishop. And now, tainting the name and having club DJs up in the church, turning it up, walking it out, and you don't see none of the mega churches and none of the convocations, none of the holy convocationals putting this man on the altar until you get a breakthrough. We have to ask ourselves, where's the sound mind? We are not exhibiting a sound mind. And because the pressures, a lot of the preachers, they got to go to work. They got a job. They got a civilian job in the circular sector, I guess you would say. And they got to go to work. And they're under this kind of pressure that I talked about. And they're not in their right mind. They're not in their sound mind. And it's coming out everything they do, in everything. One pastor had a pornography magazine as a part of his props. Hey, I want to see that video. I don't know what that's about. I can't speak on it. I don't know what he was doing. Was he doing something bad, or what was going on? Was he showing the pictures? I don't know. Anyway, that's wow. Churches spend time competing for the dollar and missing the opportunity to help hurting people. Yeah. And a lot of times the reason why the churches get the money that they are desiring to have to sustain the church is because the message wasn't from God. And the people they're not motivated to support it because the spirit ain't compelling them because the message wasn't from God anyway. Sorry, I had to tip in. Now I need to tip out for leadership prayer. Well, I appreciate you being here, Mama Michelle. You go ahead and enjoy your day or the rest of your night. Oh, I will text it to Eddie. Okay. I know, if it's inappropriate, I totally understand. Don't want Eddie to get any ideas or your beautiful wife. Do all things decently and in order. I totally get it. However, that's from a sound-minded man. So it's not often that we're seeing people behave in a respect that we can quantify their mind as being sound. We really need to fix that. We need more people to say things like, especially in leadership positions, church leaders that's actually heads of the community. You need to start saying more often, we need a sound mind. And not just reprimanding the civilians because they're not paying to go to your services, but reprimanding these other heads of churches who are sleeping outside of their marriage, having children outside of their marriage. If they're not going to do that, hey, maybe you shouldn't be the leader. Maybe you shouldn't be the leader because we need representation that exhibits a sound mind. And all of the things that I've contributed thus far is for that, for us to understand we need to go towards exhibiting a sound mind. It is extremely lucrative, but you do have to be well invested in it for you to receive the amount of money that it can produce. Now, that's my show for today. I appreciate everyone that came in, and sorry I'm not feeling well. I'll get there. I'll get better. But that's been my show. Remember, mental health. Oh, wait, let's see what Pastor Sarton is saying. I was talking to a young preacher, and his church draws people with rep, but they are not get any doctoral structure teaching. Shame. Some people were talking ill about being educated. I love formal education, but I also love formal logic. However, it's a matter of the fact that oftentimes we don't know if we could trust the information. And that's another contributing factor to the fact that we don't feel safe in, in these places where we're supposed to feel safe, getting information, accepting help, etc. Sorry, I was listening. Hey, yeah, get that book out because I need some questions answered. I don't know some information. All right, that's my show for today. I appreciate everybody for coming. Remember, mental health is physical wealth.
Mental health is physical wealth.